What if the voice that's telling you to stay small was never even actually yours? And today's conversation is really about the invisible beliefs that we inherit, the judgments that we mistake for truth, the quiet ways that women learn to shrink, perform, pretend. And Susan Houston knows this pattern well. And after years of being told that she'd never make it, she actually rebuilt her life. She walked away from all of those old judgments and now helps others stop living under someone else's ceiling. And her message is simple but powerful. Okay. And we're going to dive into that. She's not been waiting anymore for permission to actually lead. In fact, Susan Houston, she is a speaker. She is an author. She's a podcast host. She's been on the TEDx stage, and she's the creator of Done Pretending podcast. And her work really helps people to dismantle what we're going to call the secondhand beliefs, right? Those invisible judgments, those inherited fears that quietly shape our decisions, that limit our courage and keep us from performing as the version of ourselves that no longer fits us. So her speaking, her podcasting, her programs, Susan really helps people rebuild that self-trust and stop outsourcing their identity and make those bold decisions without being controlled by that fear of disapproval. So you're going to find her message today is extremely powerful, especially for women in midlife who are realizing that, hey, no, wait a second, life's not over. This is all about really starting over from a fresh point. So Susan, thank you so much for being here, because this is a very powerful topic for many of the women who are listening into this podcast today and where they are in their life. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Danielle. I'm so excited to be here. And as you know, this has been a passion of mine to really bring this message to women. I took a huge leap of faith last year. I left a 19-year career to do this. So thank you for letting me speak about it.
Absolutely. Well, let's kind of dive in. I mean, I know your work is truly centered around helping people stop pretending.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to ask you, what were you pretending for most of your life?
So, it started when I was the first memory I have was when I was 8 years old, and I handed my dad my report card. Now, I was at the top of my class in third grade. School came pretty easily until we got to multiplication tables. And then is 9 times 8 really even a number? I was an executive admin in a CPA office for 19 years. And my mantra was, I can do admin, don't ask me accounting. But, back when I was 8, my dad, he expected me to get all A's. And I worked really hard night after night on those stupid multiplication table worksheets, sitting at the table. And when I got the report card and opened it up, I had A's down the board. And in math, I actually got a B plus, which I was ecstatic about because I knew that there was a really good chance it was going to be a lot lower than that had I not worked so hard. And when I presented it to him, he looked at it, looked up at me, and handed it to me and said, "What happened to the A in math?"
Mm.
And, that I remember walking back to my bedroom and just sitting there in that shame and that disappointment that I had disappointed him. So that is where my secondhand doubt and pretending began, because from then on, I pretended to have it all together. I I became a perfectionist. I became an overachiever. If you look at my school record, if you look at my employment record, everybody would say, "Oh my gosh, she's brilliant. She's brilliant." But inside, I wasn't. I doubted everything that I did. I never thought that I was good enough.
Mhm.
So finally, we as women wear these masks of pretending for years. You know, it comes up in motherhood. We we try our best to be the best mother that we can. No one gives us a book to study on how to do it. Some of us were lucky to have good mothers, some weren't. So, really, you know, they hand you this baby, you go home from the hospital and you panic because their poop looks very odd, right? I remember those days.
Breastfeeding poop, yeah.
So, you just you hold it all together though, because you don't wanna show anyone that you can't be a good mother. I
Mm,
never wanted to show anyone that I couldn't do something that I was expected to do, whether that be a wife, even though I was not happy. I was exhausted. I was not getting any of my needs met. I wanted to be a good mother, but I didn't have it all figured out. I wanted to always be the great employee. I was there early. I worked late. I used to work so many hours without clocking them because I wanted to show them that I could get my work done. I could do what they asked me to do instead of setting a realistic expectation.
yes.
So I pretended to be all of those things. And I think when we get to a certain point in our lives, you just can't. You
Yes.
you have to stop for a minute and you realize that you don't know who you are anymore.
Hmm.
And that's what it was for me over it's been about a 4 to 5 year journey. I realized, and this is the key moment. Someone asked me, "Susan, what's on your bucket list? Where do you want to go?" And I thought, well, you know, my husband and I had always talked about going here to Iceland or going to the Caribbean, back to the Caribbean to go scuba diving. And she looked at me and she goes, "No, no, no, not what he wants. What do you want?" And I went,
Ooh.
"Oh." And I couldn't answer her because everything ran through the filter of meeting everyone else's expectations.
Mm,
I couldn't figure out where I wanted to go because I always put them first. Well, is it where they would want to go? Would it fulfill their need? Would the kids enjoy it? Um, and it took me about 4 years and a lot of pain and a lot of deep reflection and a lot of skill building to finally get to the point of figuring out who I was. And I am lucky enough, I have a group of friends that I've known since high school.
oh.
And one of them, it's amazing. My girl tribe. Um, but one of them said to me not long ago, she goes, "There she is. There's that Moxie that I knew in high school who was voted most likely to succeed because I had it all together." Well, I didn't have it all together, but I did have the moxie to go after things that I wanted, and I had
Mm,
lost that.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think most probably all, right? Maybe some of us aren't willing to admit it as readily as others, but I think probably all of us have been in this space where we realize, like, oh my gosh, I've been living my life for everybody else. And
Yeah.
that moment where we do start to reflect and be like, wait a second, what is it that I really want? And as I'm even listening to your story, I'm like, gosh, well, what would I want? But I would want to make sure that I do the things that my kids are going to be happy and my husband's going to be happy and everyone's going to be happy, right? And
Yep.
it's so true. We've come to manage your life in a way that takes care of everybody. And I see this all day long with clients in our practice. It's like women forget about themselves. They're sort of that last person on the list. And
Yeah.
some of it is that innate response, right? We are innately caregivers, and when we're parents,
Mhm.
it is innately about the survival of our children. And it's funny, Susan, I work with a lot of perimenopausal, menopausal women. And it's like you get to this point where you've taken care of everybody else. And it's like we get to perimenopause and menopause, and your body's like, hey, guess what? It's now time to take care of you.
Yep.
And the more you resist it, the worse it is. But it's for this exact reason. It's
Yeah.
almost like we've got this wonderful innate ability to like shine the spotlight on ourselves and be like, okay, well, what do I need now? What do I need to do to take care of myself? So for
Yep.
you, what did you learn in that moment?
Well, I think the first thing that I learned was that I shouldn't be I shouldn't be judging myself for having these feelings. That was
Mm,
first.
yeah.
Because, I speak a lot on judgment about what other people have given us, but we tend to be our harshest judges ourselves.
Oh yeah.
And yeah. And so what I had to learn was it's okay for me to have my own feelings. And, you know, when we lose the job of, let's say, our kids are getting grown, or, um, you're a mom, you're a wife, you're a daughter. And when you take that identity away from you, you take that job and separate yourself from that, women panic. They don't know, it terrifies them. But I realized that was the most exciting question I could ever ask myself, because I had to find out what it was that really excited me. I love nature. I love being in pine trees and hiking on a dirt trail. Um, and it took me a while for me to understand it was because that gives me peace. And I
Yes.
felt, believe it or not, even if I'm out on a dirt trail, couple miles in, I feel the safest. So that was the other thing, is I had to get really real with myself as to why I don't feel safe.
Mm,
And that was hard, Danielle. That was something that I'm still going through now. I'm still trying to identify. You know, I've been doing a lot of research on it, and there's research, uh, and I don't have it in front of me, but it's a gal, and she created this ACEs, and there are these 10 trauma things that can happen to you when you're a kid, whether it be abuse or abandonment or a myriad of other things.
sure.
But here's what I've learned: the trauma isn't the act or the thing that happened to you, it's your body's response to it.
Yes.
And that is something that, now that I understand that, it explains so much about the rest of my life, because we, all of these triggers keep happening, and we keep masking them. We keep putting on masks to say, oh, that happened a long time ago, that doesn't bother me now. And yet,
Mm,
when someone raises their voice at me, I immediately just shut down, because my dad
yeah.
was a verbal abuser.
Yes.
So now it's me understanding what triggers me and where that came from, and then finding the space within myself to feel that safety, sitting there and being, Susan, it's okay. They may be raising their voice at you, but it doesn't, you're okay. You're not going to be
Yes.
hurt. I,
Yes.
as the adult, am here to protect you now.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I think I answered your question.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people, I think that, again, that resonates with a lot of our audience. We all have these things that have occurred to us in our life. And, we do in our practice, we do a lot of, like, inner child work, and we go back through different beliefs and how they're
Mm,
formed, and the trauma work and so on and so forth. And it's funny because it is about how we perceive and what our response is to something, because it doesn't matter how, sometimes people have a qualification for what trauma is and isn't,
mhm,
right? So,
mhm.
so, maybe you were blessed enough not to be abused in some way, but maybe there was some event that occurred that was a traumatic event for you. Maybe that
Yeah,
same event wasn't traumatic for somebody else, but maybe it landed as trauma for you. And when we're little, right, our brains, they can't they don't process the logic like we do as adults.
right,
And so we get
right.
stuck with that until we actually go back and be like, oh, okay, let me see, what is it that I can gain from this? What can I learn from this? How can I transform this? And I like to believe, and I don't know about you, Susan, but I like to believe that it's a very powerful space to come from, like to start to look at those different things that occurred in our life and be like, okay, what can I learn from this?
Yeah,
Creating
yeah.
a whole other level of awareness.
And, oh, I 100% agree with you, Danielle. It's, and finding the awareness to be able to look at that person, like, I have done a lot of introspection about my dad. Where was he in that point in his
Mm,
life?
yes.
Why was he so angry? Why was he so volatile? Why and what that's helped me realize is I didn't cause any of that.
Mm,
This is just things that were in his life that
sure.
I happen to be in the way, you know,
Right.
of his
Right.
anger or his expressing himself. And I'm not justifying what he did at all, but what it has helped me understand is that sometimes people do the best that they can in that moment,
Yes.
and it's we unfortunately got some brunt of it. But when
Right.
you understand that, it's easier to, and I hate the term victimhood, but there's a certain part of me that wanted to stay in that hurt because it was
Mm,
familiar, right? Our brains love
yes.
patterns.
Yes.
So once I was able to understand more of that logic that I couldn't as a kid, I was able to move beyond that. And
Yeah.
then kind of look back, and things still trigger me, but I can look back at it and go, okay, that's from then. This is from now.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, this is what I talk about with my secondhand doubt. They're old echoes from the past that keep coming up. Again, our brain loves this stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
you have to learn to interrupt that pattern and find your new truth.
Yes. Yes. Let's dive into that a little bit, Susan. I know you talk about secondhand beliefs. What does that mean? How do we know when a belief is inherited versus chosen?
Well, it's the most invisible kind of baggage that you can have, because it doesn't feel borrowed. It feels
Mm,
like your own. And oftentimes it sounds just like your own voice saying, you're not good enough, or you're not ready for that. You need to do more to get yourself ready. Or, the one that comes up for me recently has been, oh, you're too old to do that.
mm,
Well, but what you need to do is you need to trace it back. And sometimes when I hear that little voice, I sit with it and ask it, who whose voice is that? Is that really what I believe about myself? Or can I think back to someone who gave me that and I took it as truth? We're so susceptible, especially for people that we trust deeply, whether it's
Mm,
parents or coaches or teachers. You know, we when we're little, we take what they say to us as truth because like you
yeah,
said, we don't have the logic to think through everything. And so you have to really examine what that statement was. My dad's was, "Where's the A in math?" That's not good enough. Well,
right.
that stuck with me for decades. I'm not good enough, or I haven't done enough yet to make myself feel successful or to be the good mom, the good wife, the good employee. So, you know, a lot of times it's parents who've told you to be realistic, or a partner. This one's big for me, a partner who got uncomfortable when I started growing out of this. Um,
Hmm.
but what you have to remember is that doubt was never yours to carry, and it's got a return address. Give it back. And then,
Yeah.
you know, you can ask it when I hear, "Oh, it's too late to do that." I'll give you an example. I, when I was 18, wanted to be a Navy fighter jet pilot. And I did everything to prepare for that through high school. And I walked into the recruiter's office, this big tall guy, and he puts his hands on his hips and looks me up and down and goes, "Oh, honey, people like you don't fly jets." And I wish I could tell you that I'm like, "Pfft, right." Well, I didn't. I heard, "Oh, I must not be good enough." And I walked away from that. Well, I've always wanted to fly. So it was suggested to me, "Why don't you go take a flying lesson?" And I'm like, there was a part of me that said, "Oh, that ship sailed. I'm too old for that." And then I thought, wait a minute. No, I'm not. So I went, I guess it's been 2 weeks ago now. I went and did a demo flight and had the time of my life. This younger guy was my instructor, and he realized that I felt pretty comfortable, and as long as he could talk me through everything, I would be willing to do anything. So he had me, doing 45-degree banking turns and circles, and I
That's
basically did
great.
everything except take off and land the plane. Um, and at one point, talk about wearing a mask. He looks over at me and he goes, at one point, I cursed at him. And he goes, "Oh, did I finally break through? You're a little nervous." And I said, "Are you kidding me? I've been over here dying. Yes, I'm nervous." And he goes, "Well, you need to play poker because you wear it really well." And even that comment was like, "Oh, I do. Never let anybody show your true feelings," right? So, yeah. The secondhand doubt, it's something that I work a lot with, and with my clients, I'm doing a master class on it, helping people realize that it doesn't have to control your life. You are chosen to do so much more. You are chosen to live this full life, because all of these experiences that we've experienced, you've gone through them for a reason. And that is what drives me. It hasn't been great all of the time. I can't say that my life has been rosy and rainbows and all of that. But what I can tell you is when I look back, every one of those instances, someone's been put in front of me for me to help. And that is what I realized that my purpose was a couple of years ago. And I fully stepped into that so that I can help people overcome these things that are holding us down and holding us back, and realizing that we have a lot to give to the world, and just helping people own that and realize that.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that you're doing that because I mean, your stories are could be any one of our stories. We all have versions of those
Yeah.
stories where we're like, "Oh, listen to that belief. Like, what is that? Where did that come from?" And recognizing like, "Okay, is that really real or did that come from some place in the past? And is that really what's holding me back?" And I
Yep.
think the word that comes to mind for me here too is fear. I think that we
Mhm.
get stuck in fear, whether that fear is like literal in the moment or
Mhm.
whether it's a fear that's kind of stuck in our body from something happened before. And I think many women kind of look at fear as like it's a sign that they're not stepping into the right thing or they're not doing in the right thing. So could fear actually be a sign that you're stepping into something truthful, stepping into something that is what your next steps are?
100% yes. And you're right. So, our brains are wired to keep us safe. And what will happen is when we get fearful, we go into fight or flight mode. And that's
Yes.
just what we're wired to do. So there is a certain degree of, okay, is this fear legitimate? You're walking at night by yourself and you have that fear, that's legitimate. Listen to that gut feeling. But if you want to do something beyond what you're doing right now, maybe for me, I wanted to start a podcast to allow people to share their stories. I had never done a podcast. What do I know about any of this stuff, right? And the fear came in like, eh, people are going to laugh at you. People aren't going to listen to you. Um, every fear started running through my brain. And I had to stop and go, wait a minute. Um, someone that you and I are both familiar with, Bo Eason, talks about resistance, right?
Yes.
And
Mhm.
when we start coming into our true purpose, there's resistance that comes up, and it can be fear, and it can show up and it will sound logical, like, you don't have any experience in this. How are you going to make that happen? Well, you figure
Mhm.
it out. And
Right.
what I tell the people that I work with all the time is take that first step. It doesn't have to be this big leap. Just take a step, because it's training yourself that, okay, it's okay to be a little fearful, but do it anyway.
Yes.
Yeah.
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 Yes. I love that. The other thing that you had mentioned before that I'd like to touch upon is judgment, right? You said that
Mm,
bias and judgment, they don't always come from the outside. And sometimes the most dangerous kind is the voice, right? That we mistake for our own bias and judgment. So how
yeah.
does that like let's talk a little bit about that voice because I'm sure that also plays a role in holding people back in their lives.
It does. I watched people very, very close to me face outside bias and judgment. But here's what I watched as they got older. We they had this judgment against them, and everything that they hear about overcoming that is to forgive, be grateful, forgiveness. But they can't find that forgiveness. So then they start judging themselves. And so now they're in this vicious cycle. They've been hurt by judgment, but it's now turned around to, I can't forgive someone. Something must be wrong with me. So I'm damaged. And that is a lot of our internal hurt, and allowing ourselves to sit in that hurt, and to surround yourself with people. And it can be girl tribes. It can be a therapist if you need a therapist. It can be, hopefully, you've got a great partner, but allowing yourself to open up and be vulnerable enough to hurt so that you can release it. And we are our worst critics, right? I mean, as women, how many times do we look at pictures and go, "Oh my God, do not post that picture. Do not put that picture up anywhere because I look horrible." And our
Yeah.
friends or our family are like, "What? You look great."
Yes.
But we can't see it, right?
Right. Yes,
So it's
absolutely.
all that internal talk of keeping ourselves down, judging ourselves for things that are totally unwarranted. Um, and we work a lot on that in my classes and my cohorts to, one, just identify it, actually acknowledge that it exists, and then how to release it too.
Yeah, I love what you said because we can get very hmm, positive psychology, new agey, and like just forgive and forget. And I think you're spot on in what you said. When we just ignore the fundamentals of what's really going on for us, is
Yeah.
it's like we forget to validate our own feelings and emotions as if they're not okay. They're not okay to exist. They're not okay to be real. But I mean, you and I have a mutual friend, Dr. Joan Rosenberg, and she's
Yes.
been on our podcast here. So, anybody listening, you definitely want to look up that podcast episode with Dr. Joan Rosenberg. And she wrote a book, 90 Seconds to a Life You Love. And I know we use it all the time in my practice because it's so powerful. It's like, well, hey, when that emotion comes up, sit with it, feel it, engage with it. And
Yep.
Dr. Jones' thing is, hey, it's 90 seconds. Ride the wave. Allow yourself to ride the wave. Otherwise, we bury. And there's another great book. The Body Keeps the Score. The Body Keeps the Score. And
Something like that.
and
Yeah.
yeah, and that book is really great because it's telling you too, like, hey, these emotions, these things that we avoid and we ignore, they get trapped in the body as
Hmm.
well. And so the more we just keep pretending like, oh, it's okay, then we stay stuck, literally,
We do.
right? The emotions stay stuck, we stay stuck, and we never move forward. So how do you help your clients move past that piece?
The very first step is acknowledging it, and just like Joan said, sitting with it and allowing yourself to feel it and to be okay and realize that this hurt happened to me, whatever it is, this pain, and it's not my fault, right? It's not my fault that it's controlling my life, but I can identify it and decide, is there any truth in it? Is there some, and what I like to do with my clients too is find the lesson that I was supposed to learn in that. Because, um, once you understand that you were given that experience or that pain for a reason, what is that? And then you can start looking to the future and finding how you can use that. And it's not dismissing it, it's not forgiving it away. Um, I I said one time about someone who placed a big judgment on me, um, calling me a heathen when about something that totally was not my fault, but I was the heathen. And a mutual friend and I were talking about it, and he said, she would really, really like to be close to you again. And I said, I will never forget how that made me feel. I can be pleasant, but I can never let myself be vulnerable with that person again. And I think there's a certain part of getting over it too, realizing that your emotions are important, realizing that you can set boundaries and that's okay. And that gives you strength to move on and move forward.
Yeah, I think the big word there that you used is boundaries, because
Yeah.
I find that especially in working with so many women, like boundaries are the biggest thing that come up as an obstacle for them living the life that they want. And
Hmm.
it could be boundaries with themselves, but often it's boundaries with the people in their lives. And it kind of like it circles back to sort of the stuff that we talked about in the beginning of the podcast earlier about
Yeah.
how we are like, we're just like, there is this innate part of us that wants to take care of everybody and everything else. And so we kind of let those boundaries go and we forget
Right.
to bring them back in, but they're just pivotal. And yeah, we don't we don't have to. It's not enlightenment to give yourself to everybody all the time. Those boundaries are actually really critical to our own well-being for so many different reasons, and I think that's
100%.
important.
I'll give
The
you
other
another reason why those boundaries are so important.
Yeah, yeah.
As a mom to two daughters who are now in their later 20s, they saw me not have those boundaries for a lot of
Mm,
years.
yes.
And now I see patterns in them that
Yeah.
I probably gave them the template for.
Yep.
So
Yep.
at least now I can talk to them honestly, like, it's okay for you to feel overwhelmed and say, no, I can't do that. I can't take on this project. I can't have the whole family over. It's too much for me at this moment. That's okay. You're not failing as the wife. You're not failing as the hostess or the mother. You are taking care of your needs first so that you can give it back to everybody else when they need it. So, yeah.
It's the whole oxygen mask analogy, right?
Oh,
The
yeah.
other It's a big one. It's so
I
relevant.
know.
I can't say I'm always great at it. Yeah, like
Oh, no.
full hands down. Like I'm still a work in progress, as we all are, right? And
Yep.
as you're talking about your daughters, I'm thinking about like, oh yeah, and sometimes where we also go with that is it's so easy to be like, oh, I messed up my kids, and then like the whole other spiral begins
Oh,
of the
yeah.
guilt and shame, and then you got to be like, oh wait, stop, freeze, like I always tell myself like that was part, because as like you said, they don't come with a manual. There's probably so
Yeah.
many things I used to joke. I'm like, yeah, my kids are probably going to be in therapy for like 90% of the things I've said to them over their
I
lives,
said the same
because
thing.
like, stuff falls out of your mouth like you're human. And
Mhm.
so we have to be like, okay, well, they're also in this lifetime. And I kind of believe in the soul's journey, right? Like their soul's journey. They chose me as their parent because they were going to
Mhm.
get these lessons in their life. And so it's just,
Yeah.
it is what it is. Like we can't just keep beating ourselves down. Otherwise, how do you live? You've got to, whipping yourself doesn't change anything that's happened. Living in the past or worried about that stuff it doesn't allow us to progress forward, you know.
Exactly.
But I'll
Exactly.
tell you the other thing that I was thinking of as you were talking about that I think is really critical as well, and I'd love to hear your take on this. um, as we were talking about those emotions, the one thing that struck me is, I don't know if you experience this, I'm sure some of our listeners experience this. The vulnerability isn't just vulnerability with those outside of us, but it's also the vulnerability and honesty with ourselves. And I
Mhm.
say that because I'm a little type A. right? I'm a little
Yeah.
like cerebral, like all in my head. And I've got to
Hmm.
always remember to like this is why I teach this stuff really well, right? Bring myself back into my body because I'm not just a head, I'm a head and a body. But it's really easy too, is someone who lives up here, and a lot of our listeners, they're successful, they're high performers. But when you live up here, you also developed safety mechanisms to even prevent yourself from being vulnerable with yourself. It's like a mask on top of the mask on top of the mask. And so I've got to remind myself, like, okay, like, am I just being like my stoic self, or is there something that I need to experience, some emotion that's there that needs to be revealed, right? And sometimes I admit it, like sometimes I'm a tough nut to crack. And I'm sure other people are too, but I think it's good for us to remember that, and good for us to like dive in. I'm sure you experience this with your clients. They're like, no, I'm great. I'm great. I'm
Yeah.
fine.
I'm fine. Oh my gosh, I talk so much about I'm fine. Anybody says that
Yes.
to me, I'm like, all right, let's just start peeling the layers back here. Yeah, being vulnerable is really hard. And I think what we do often is keep ourselves so busy that it doesn't allow us to get quiet enough to be vulnerable. I know I'm
Yep.
guilty of that. And especially
Okay.
when you're in the thick of it, when you're working, when you've got the kids, a lot of us have aging parents that we're also taking care of. We're busy. So
Yes.
there you have to carve out your time. And
Yes.
whether that's to sit quietly and journal, to meditate, to pray, to read your Bible, whatever it is for you, take the time.
Mhm.
And that, I mean, really that's the first step is putting yourself first, acknowledging that your needs matter, your feelings matter, and taking 10, 15 minutes. A lot of people are like, I don't have an hour to do this. I'm not asking for an hour. Give me 5 minutes, 5 minutes, and then let's
Yes.
go from there. But yeah, because really it goes back to fear. Like you said, if we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, that's really scary because who's going to
Sure.
come shore us up? If I'm vulnerable, how am I going to be able to help anybody else?
Yes.
You know? So,
Yeah. Yeah. I can hear myself sometimes in my head. It's like, all right, Danielle, you got this. You got this. But there's so much of the you got this, like that, uh, uh, motivating myself, right? That
mhm.
sometimes there's not the like, well, what is there to feel and experience? And so we bury it and we think like, oh, we're positively thinking and we're moving forward. And it doesn't necessarily work that way. And I'm telling you that because I'm real good at it.
Well, it'll work that way for a little while, right? And then
Yeah.
something's gonna like happen and you're gonna go, whoa, that didn't work. Or, it, something just finally hits you and I remember when someone said something to me about them not believing in me doing what I'm doing. And I just sat there with my mouth open, like, how can you say that? Because I've just shown you all the ways that I'm so strong and that I can do this. And for them to doubt me, it brought up all those fears in me. But instead of me allowing myself to sit in that and be like, okay, they just voiced something that's probably deep within me, I just buried it and got mad. And,
Yeah.
that's what we do. We just keep going. So,
I love that you use that as an opportunity, right? I have a mentor, and his saying was always, no matter what shows up, you say thank you, right? No
yeah,
matter what it is, you just say thank you. And it's an opportunity when we can recognize that whatever that emotion is, it's a mirror for something else. Then we actually grow from it. We
right,
we
right.
actually grow as a result of it. But you talk about living under someone else's ceiling. So
Mm.
I think this is a perfect opportunity to talk about that. What does that mean?
um, living under someone else's expectations or limits. And a lot of times this happens in marriage. It can happen in your workplace, even. It can happen with your friends. They don't want you to grow beyond this ceiling that they've created or that you've created yourself because they don't know what to do with that and they feel threatened. It starts bringing
Yeah.
up emotions for them, fears for them, making them vulnerable, all these things that we've talked about. Um, so this ceiling, in business, it was always women can't crack the ceiling, the glass ceiling, right? Well, we all have our own glass ceiling that
Sure.
we limit ourselves to.
Yes.
And the thing is a lot of us can look through that glass and see what could be on the other side, but yet we don't feel like we're worthy enough to go get it. We're not smart enough to go get it. We don't deserve it for whatever reason. It's going to disrupt everybody else if I go beyond that ceiling. And you have to realize that if that is your purpose, if you want and have this desire and this need to go beyond that ceiling, what a gift you can give to everyone around you to show them that they can do it too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I
So,
love that.
yeah.
Yeah, again, another opportunity to grow and learn. Tell me, I know recently you had an experience, right? Where someone kind of gave you a ceiling. They told you you were past your prime, which is what
Oh
every
my gosh,
middle-aged woman
Danielle,
wants to hear, right?
let me tell
What?
you,
Yeah.
I'm still fired up about this. So the short of the long story is I was sitting in Starbucks working on my podcast, just doing some notes, and a guy leaned over and he goes, in his I call him a man child. He was probably in his early 20s. He had on button down and a blazer. I suspect he worked somewhere like at a bank nearby. And he when I told him I was on my podcast, he kind of gave me that judgmental look of, "You have a podcast?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Oh." And I'm like, "What?" And he goes, "Well, women your age just really aren't successful at that." And I said,
What?
eh, I almost killed him. I almost unalived him, as they say.
Yes.
But I gathered my poise for a minute and said, why would you think that I couldn't be successful? And he goes, well, women past their prime just don't have the cognitive ability to think in those realms.
The
Danielle, it was all,
cognitive
I'm looking around like, is anybody else hearing this kid? And everybody's got their earbuds in and doing their own work, And then, a thought comes through. Maybe he's just baiting me. No, he really believed it.
Wow.
And what I what I told him was, honey, you know, what you don't realize is when we get to this age, we've experienced life. We now know what we want. We're
Mm,
also kind of done pretending that we care about everybody else's opinion and we're not afraid to go for it. And I'm really sorry that you have that thought because you have no idea what you're missing. And he just
yeah. And
sat back. He was surprised that I would give it back to him. And
yeah.
then I left and I walked outside, just got in my car like, ah.
And he's got a mom.
You
He's
know,
got a mom.
as
Yeah.
as a friend of mine pointed out to me, she goes, "Ooh, little judgment on your part came up." And I said, "I'm a work in progress, okay?" But yes, it really I would my if I we replay scenarios in our head all the time, right? I would have
Yes.
said, "Where does that come from? Why do you think I'm past my prime? What do you
Yes.
think prime is?"
Yes.
And being as young as he is, I can remember being that young and thinking someone 40 years old was like psh, on their way out the door.
And
Little
now
did I
here we
know.
are. We're like,
Here
we're
we
just
are.
getting started.
Oh, yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
But it is like God was like, all right, Susan, let's wake up this part of you right here. And they dropped it
Yeah.
right next to your Starbucks.
Oh, yeah, I needed a kick in my arse, and man, did he give it to me. And because someone had said to me, "Where's that badass girl that I knew that wanted to fly
Mm.
jets and wanted to do this and wanted to do that?" And I'm like, "Well, here I am." And she goes, "Yeah, here I am is not it." So, and then this happened right afterwards. It's like, "Oh, okay. All right."
There she is.
There she is.
Well, I
Yeah.
think this brings me to a really good question that I know that you are expert at. You know, why do you believe that midlife is not a crisis, but really one of the most powerful reinvention points in a woman's life?
Well, we we have experienced life. Okay. So, um we have gone through a lot at this stage. We have had so many lived experiences. And if we can look at those, like I like to think of it as a book, we've got a lot of chapters that have built, in my mind, it's built the arc of the story. And the story's not over. It's just really
Mm,
starting to take off now. But we can draw back on all of these lived experiences and use them to propel ourselves to do what it is that we want to do. We've
mm,
learned what works and what hasn't in certain situations, but we've also developed this resilience to be like, you know what, and I'm at this point myself right now. I'm kind of done with everyone's opinion about me. This is
mm.
me, and I'm okay with not everybody liking it. And I
Yeah.
think that's huge. But I think midlife, you kind of get to that point. I'm stopping being the people pleaser to absolutely everyone else. I'm
Yes.
stopping overworking myself. I'm stopping doing everything for my kids when they ask. It's like, no, you know what? You guys are old enough. Go figure some of this out yourself. Or no, I can't do all of those projects because it would take away from everything else for me. Boundaries, we talked about it earlier. So, midlife to me, and it's taken me a few years to get to this point, is I'm excited now because I don't have the tolerance for other people's shit. I don't have
Yeah.
the patience for it all anymore. And yet I have wisdom, a lot of
Mm,
wisdom in my life.
yeah.
So now, if I want to tackle a project, okay, I've got experience, I've got wisdom, I've got contacts behind me.
Yes.
Plus, I'm not worried about failing because we've all failed at different things
Mm,
and we get right back up and move on.
yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
the end. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. And I know you do a lot of work with your clients on the four truths. Tell me about those four truths.
So, we've talked about a lot of them. The truth number one is your pretending has run out.
Mm,
It's women know exactly when it is, and they catch themselves performing, and we're kind of done with that. And then the second one is that you have this deep need to find your own identity again. Like when my friend asked me, "What's on your bucket list?" Why couldn't I figure that out? Why don't I know what I want to do? So then
mm,
it becomes this huge desire in yourself to find out, who am I again? What excites me? What lights me up?
mm.
What makes me feel safe? What relaxes me? All of these
Yeah.
different emotions, exploring all of that. And then the secondhand doubt, and understanding that a lot of these voices in your head that come up, these limiting beliefs, are
Hmm.
not necessarily all yours. You can let go of them. And then finally, like I just said, wisdom is at its peak at this level. Um, we've survived hard stuff,
Yes.
and we've had heartbreak, we've had failure, we've had success, we've had extreme love, both, good and bad.
Yeah.
So, when you're young, you're really ambitious, but as you get older, you just get wiser. We
Mm,
can still be ambitious, but we can temper that with, is this really what I want? Is this going to give me the result, the life, the feeling that I want at this stage of my life? So,
yeah. And those
and
are
so many
very,
women at this stage just are feeling so depleted and so invisible. And it's because we live in a culture that just values youth and newness, especially now with social media. Something new, something exciting all the time, looking great all the time. And what's really starting to come out in culture today is authenticity, just
yes.
being yourself. And people, when they see that with someone, they just they're immediately attracted to it. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
I love that. And that goes right back to what you said, like, hey, done pretending.
done
And
pretending.
that's what it means, huh? Done pretending.
Yep,
I love it. I love it.
100%.
So, if there's a woman listening today who feels sort of that quiet inner nudge saying, like, there's more for me, but
Yeah.
she's scared to act on it, what would you want her to know? What would be that powerful piece of information or a couple of pieces of information that you'd want her to take away from today's podcast?
To realize that she's enough just
Mm,
the way she is. And you're not abandoning everything else that you've been through. You are just coming from a place of experience and knowledge, and that it's a new beginning for you. It doesn't mean you have to uproot your life. It doesn't mean you have to completely change. It just means you're okay the way that you are,
mhm.
and you can learn to express that more.
I love that. It's like
Yeah,
it's time for us to be kinder and gentler to ourselves. And you look out in the world and we're being anything but kinder and gentler to the people around us. So
true.
imagine the impact that it's having. If we're worse to ourselves than what it is looking like that out there, it's really time to wake up. So I think your message
Yeah,
is so important, so profound. And I thank you for the work that you're doing out in the world and for the lives that you're changing. And I'm so glad that you're done pretending because these gifts are so necessary in the world right now. So, how
thank you,
can
Danielle.
people you're welcome. How can people learn more about you? I know you have this amazing master class that can sort of teach some of
Mhm.
these concepts where people can learn more about you and your work. Will you please share that with our audience?
The best way is to go right to my website, which is thesusanhouston.com. On there, it'll have the links to all of my podcasts, which is Done Pretending, which is on all the channels. It'll have my master class. I do a cohort, which is a really exclusive, intensive, and very intimate group of people where we usually spend about 60 days going over stuff.
Hmm.
Those are the best ways to get a hold of me.
I love those.
I don't know if
And
you can hear that.
nope.
Good. my
Don't
my
hear it.
lawnmower guy is like right out my window.
Oh yeah, no, no. Well, we Zoom cut it right out or this cut it right out. We're all
Perfect.
good. And then I'll edit it out anyway. So
Yeah.
excellent, Susan. So we'll have those links for everybody in the show notes, or just go ahead and Susan and Houston and the are all spelled exactly as they are. The Susan houston.com. So thank you so much for joining us today. And we look forward to following you and seeing your journey and learning from all your great wisdom. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Danielle. I had a blast. This was great.
Yes, yes. Real time, real people, real wisdom, real women.
Love
Real
it.
time. All right. And until next week, we'll see you then.